Welcome, everybody, to Say No More Xenomorph, our weekly recap of Alien Earth appearing on Disney FX Hulu. We're talking about episode 6 tonight, The Fly, and I am here with one of Earth's mightiest critics, Jeff York of The Establishing Shot and Pipeline Artists. Welcome, Jack. Welcome back, Jeff. How you doing? I almost called you Welcome Jack, which is,
that's okay. I'll answer to Jack if you want me to. You can't handle the truth, but great to see you again.
That's what this show could use, a shining era Jack Nicholson in Alien Earth.
You want answers? I want answers. What the hell is going on in that spaceship?
Oh, we need him on that wall. So
you said the xenomorph was not to be touched. If the xenomorph is in danger.
There's so much to talk about in this episode, and yet so very little. I feel bad because I feel like all we do is since week 1, we've come on this show and kind of ragged on this series, but there have been some moments of brightness, some moments of hope. They all get drowned out by what I think is rank stupidity, which is beneath the series, even despite it's having some kind of lowlights as we talked about with some of the movies, and also beneath the quality of the creative team. Now, I'm not familiar with Noah Hawley, but everybody and their mother was telling me that the work he did on Fargo, and oh my gosh, what's the mutant show he did on? Darn it!
Sorry, I'm blanking.
Me too. I should probably look this up, but it's been a long day.
But he did a great job on Fargo for sure. I mean, he did 5 seasons now, and I think 4 of them were quite. Especially the first 2 seasons, these were excellent, and the others were the other 2 were good, and one was, I think, okay. It wasn't unwatchable. It wasn't a train wreck, but it wasn't as good as the others. But the first 2 seasons, and maybe to some degree 3, were quite terrific.
Well, and that's sort of the problem. I go back to the Stan Lee motto: is everybody's first. Every comic book is somebody's first comic book, and this is my first Noah Hawley series. And so far, I'm not encouraged to go back and explore his other work, even though people implore me to do so. The problem is, some of those are the same people who are also enjoying Alien Earth, and I don't understand how that's possible. But let's talk about episode 6, The Fly, which we finally meet the 5th species that was on that Deep Space Weyland-Yutani science vessel that crashed into Prodigy's island. And now the critters, especially at the end of this episode, are running rampant. But the 5th species it looks kind of like a fly. It's like a cross between a fly and a scrotum. I don't know what.
It's got a big bulbous sac that seems to be sort of shaking about, so it might be a big in joke or whatever, but yeah, it's kind of hideous and weird, but it conjures up thoughts of other things. So
yeah, and it's much like a lot of other things on this show and in this universe, it spits acid and dissolves things. So what happened in this episode? Last episode was the flashback to the Maginot. Is an entire hour of television devoted to something that had been implied in the opening episode, and the only new information we got was stuff that caused narrative problems for the rest of the series. And this episode is back to the regular forward-facing continuity, but it has sort of the same problems, which is introduces contradictions. It introduces questions that I have no confidence that the series will answer in the next 2 episodes, because it's an 8-episode first season. But we're back on Prodigy Island. Lots of things happen. I'm going to go out of order here because it's hard to keep up with everything. Arthur and Sylvia. Yeah. Arthur and Sylvia are the 2 boy Cavaliers, 2 top kind of scientists and pseudo confidants. They've been tasked with erasing Nibs's memory because she's had that incident where she sort of started to remember things and believe that she was pregnant, and there are all these kinds of problems. So I said, well, we can just take that chunk out of her programming / memory, as it were. And Arthur had kind of a moral problem with that and was summarily fired by Adam, who's I don't know if he's a cyborg, if he's just a mean SOB, but he's sort of the second in command, it seems, over there at Prodigy, at least on the island. And Arthur gets very indignant, and we think that he's going to be let out of the building, as you would in any corporation, especially dealing with top secret high-tech materials. But he's not. He's left to kind of wander around, which we'll come back to later in the episode. Nibs does get her mind erased, and the first thing that Prodigy thinks to do is set her up where she can be awakened by Wendy, who's going to immediately start asking her questions, unaware of the fact that her friend had just had her memory erased. On top of that, explaining to the audience that in a couple of weeks, there's supposed to be this giant international or intercorporate presentation where Boy unveils these synths to the world, not thinking that they might have a big problem realizing one of their memories has been erased, and all these sort of continuity issues that brings up. What else happens? Wendy continues to talk to the teen Xenomorph, who continues to grow. What is it? I'm trying to remember the names of all these characters. They're all the Peter Pan archetypes.
Yes. I mean, there's Toodles, who's now wants to go by the name of Isaac, and he plays kind of the key role in the, I would say, the third act of this episode, with him going to sort of check on the species and feed it, feed the fly, the character that is the title of the show, this episode. And I don't know if you want to talk about what happens to him, but it's interesting because I think Kersh sort of sets him up for something for him to monitor, because I think he sort of sends him almost to his doom, because he asks if Curly is there, and he catches Isaac lying. Because Isaac wants to prove himself, or Toodles as he's known. And he certainly shows to be more of a Toodles than an Isaac here, because he makes major dumb childish mistakes. But Kersh is monitoring sort of some of what's going on in the lab, at least after the death of Isaac Toodles. And, sort of, I think, figuring out that where he stands a little bit as a cyborg, let alone where the synths stand, because I don't know, maybe I'm getting ahead of ourselves here, Ian, but I thought the most interesting part of it is that this fly now somehow sort of emerges, as you started off by saying, as an explained creature, and we get to know that there's this sort of hive that it's buzzing around in, and it's got a couple of them in there, and when it comes out to feed, it's being fed spare parts. They look like electronics, like almost like broken ham radios or stuff like that. It's just junk, and that's what his diet is. And as soon as you see, oh, that's what the diet is, which we never knew before, you go, wait a minute, that synth guy is underneath all this kind of robotic too. He just happens to have the implanted personality of the child in there. So he's probably going to meet his doom really fast, and it happens super fast because, as you said, the fly spits some sort of fluid that has the same effect of Jeff Goldblum's vomit in the fly, and suddenly turns everything into sort of a lovely acid bath. And his face is dissolved. He spits up stuff, and he's pretty much a goner after that. And what I think was interesting about it, and then maybe this is too premature into it, is they're feeding on him. It's not like they just get rid of him, but no, they come down and they're feeding on him. Like they could eat the tray of stuff that he's brought, but they're going for him, which creates an interesting point, and maybe the thing I teased you earlier a little bit about before we started, that I think is the interesting part of the show, and that is the synths are now shown to be very vulnerable. And the thinking was sort of, I think, with Boy Cavalier, that, okay, I'm going to put these young people inside these, essentially these impenetrable sort of solvent armors, because they can't be, hibernated by the xenomorphs. They're invulnerable to them. In fact, he even sort of was shown right by Wendy taking out the adult xenomorph in a previous episode. So these might be exactly what he wanted, these super soldiers that he can put young people in, or any kind of soul in, if you will, and they will live forever. But now this fly from another planet shows that, well, maybe those things aren't so indestructible. Maybe, these things are able to be done away with as easily as humans are when they're impregnated with the xenomorph seed, or whatever you want to call it. What I think is interesting about it, and I sort of had a thought after we had talked earlier about it, was that at the end, Kersh is watching all that. And of course, Kersh, I think, is very conscientious, especially after the I thought maybe one of the better scenes in this episode where he's in the elevator, sort of insulting back and forth with Morrow about like, oh, you think you're pretty cool because you're half human and synth, but and then Morrow's making implications like you're an obsolete old robot, but Kersh is thinking, well, maybe these new synths aren't all they're cracked up to be, and I don't know if he's setting up Boy Cavalier for a great fall or whatever, but it seems like Kersh is doing his own experiments to see, I'm sent this synth in to feed this thing, and now I find out that indeed it's pretty vulnerable to this strain of alien species, just as humans are to the Xenomorph. So we've got all these people on this alien Earth now sort of trying to figure out who's going to control the planet, who's going to rule the roost. And right now, I think Kersh, despite being in a, I'm thinking of Judd Hirsch, Kersh, despite being in sort of a, wouldn't it be funny if he's like, wait a minute, you got to think about this. I may be asleep, but I'm not dead yet. Anyway, but Kersh, played by Timothy Olyphant, sort of in his sort of laconic way, is maybe thinking that he might be smarter, a la David, in some of the previous stuff from the Prometheus and those kind of films, that he might have the upper hand on maybe being an old dog, but he's still a wise guy who's been around for a long time and is sort of able to ascertain the true enemies and where they stand. It's especially interesting because I think one of the other great scenes in it, other than the Morrow Kersh insulting each other on the elevator scene, is when Sylvia has that discussion with Wendy. And I said that I think that the idea of this kind of finally announces itself, maybe written in dialogue that we maybe have seen just hinted at a little bit more beforehand. And that is, what's worth saving? I mean, Wendy's mad because they've wiped the memory of Nibs, and this isn't being true to her, and it's not helpful, and who makes that decision, and why did the humans make that decision? And her implication is, now that she's in this trick cool body of this machine, that maybe she's superior to Dame Sylvia, who is, as a human being, making a very cold and selfish decision that hurts the synths and hurt Nibs. And maybe the humans aren't worth surviving, as they seem to be trying to figure out, how do we make humans survive? Do they survive in the synth body? And right now, Wendy's kind of had it up to here with the humans who are kind of screwing things up. And I think to some degree, even Arthur has a little bit of that issue too with his wife, because why are we making these bad decisions based on what? They're not helping the experiment. I'm not sure we have that authority. So some of those kind of things.
Well, I mean, that's the that's the strange part about this show, and I think it's worth exploring.
Yeah.
But as with so many things, not in an Alien series, or at least
not this late in the game. I mean, we've
Right.
got 2 episodes left, and now they kind of get to, oh, that's what we're really all about here. I mean,
well,
I don't know. It seems late.
The whole idea of wiping Nibs's memory, I don't necessarily have a problem with that, as long as they're smart about it, and they also sort of patch or overwrite the memories of the other synths that are involved, because
Yes.
otherwise you're going to run into this problem of
Right.
it's kind of like, it's like the gag in Men in Black, where
Yes.
they have the little wand that erases people's memory, but then you go up and you start talking to them about UFO stuff. I'm like, okay, now I have to erase you again. Now I have to erase you again. They keep bringing it up. It's like, what are you doing? It's interesting because I don't know if it's an ethical concern, because these are no longer people. They have the consciousness transferred to a synthetic body, but once it has been digitized and transferred, and once you can muck around with people's memories and personalities and hormones, are they human anymore? What does that do to the soul? I mean, that's Blade Runner stuff, which this series so wants to be Blade Runner. It's not even funny.
No, you're right. And I also dare say, who is Wendy to make these kinds of judgments herself? She's making moral judgments upon Sylvia and the kind of experimentations that the lab is doing. And I mean, even if she's a smart cookie, which they establish she's smart, but I mean, she's not that smart, because all the other kids act like they're kids in these synth bodies. But she's suddenly able to have ethical discussions like that are worthy of maybe a grad student, especially giving the history of man and exploration and strange new worlds, and what are we doing with those kind of things or something, because it seems like suddenly she's become this super intellectual thing, not only able to communicate with the teen Xenomorph, but also have these peer discussions or even arguments, face-offs with Sylvia. And there's nothing in her that would suggest that that was there before, other than she's a pretty smart kid. But that kind of thing is out of her pay grade. And I think it's an interesting scene because, suddenly that's now, I think, where Wendy is going. I think Wendy, if I dare say from a prediction standpoint, is probably going to side with these aliens in cages. And she's going to feel like she too has been sort of imprisoned in the synth body or by this experiment, and turn against her human captors, like Boy Cavalier and Dame Sylvia, who I think will be, collateral damage, if not in the next episode, certainly by the end.
Well, yeah, and the issue with Wendy is that the whole course of this has taken place over, I think, 10 days at the most, and she has gone from this kind of like, I'm going to skip off to this spaceship adventure and grab a sword make a sword out of a paper cutter blade and have my little teddy bear belt accessory, to your point, having these very sophisticated, at least sophisticated sounding arguments with, one of the head scientists at Prodigy. She is the character that the scene needs her to be, and not a character that exists in its own reality with narrative consistency. And it's very frustrating. But going back to the Nibs conversation, again, she wakes up. Wendy is having these conversations with Nibs. It's been established early on that there are scientists who are able to monitor everything, everything that these synths see and do and practically think, and they can manipulate them remotely.
Mm-hmm.
This high security scientific research facility has cameras, it's got surveillance, but again, it's very selective. So when people are having confidential conversations with synthetics or confidential conversations in labs that are being monitored, you wonder, why are there no alarm bells going off, even silent alarms, or someone being alerted to, hey, you might want to go check on what's going over in room 4. It becomes especially problematic when Arthur is summarily fired, and then towards the end of the episode, Joe comes into the control room, and Arthur is there by himself collecting his personal things, including information from Prodigy. I've been let go from a company in the 21st century. They have people escort you out. They have someone watch you as you go into your office, and they stand there as you empty your desk and hand over your key card and your laptop and all that stuff. And then they march you out. There's none of this like, oh yeah, we'll just come get you. You can hang out, do whatever you need, for the exact reason outlined in this episode, because Arthur tells Joe basically how to get Wendy off the island, and also logs into this terminal, and there's one command line that says deactivate synth tracking, yes/no. Now I get this is retro future technology going back to the 1979 Alien movie, but again, you can turn off the tracking of your $1 trillion synth program with one yes or no prompt given by someone who's just been fired, and that doesn't send off any kind of an alarm or into the computer, or it doesn't go to like 17 different people who might go, what? No, reject command. This show is so profoundly dumb. It's getting to be depressing. I think I mentioned that it was like episode 2 or 3 that I was on the verge of legitimate tears because it was so awful and I didn't want to watch anymore. It's getting to that point. It's beyond tears though. I think I've transcended rage. I'm just into apathy. I'm like, let's just get it over with. I'm going to be talking about it. I don't want to finish it, but I can't not. I'm a rubbernecker.
No, I think you're right about so much of what you just said that has been a problem sort of since the very beginning, because it feels like they're wasting a lot of time and they haven't thought a lot of it through. And those things to me are unforgivable because, again, that's stuff that should have been ironed out in the script writing stage. And before you film anything, you have to have those things ironed out. I'm going to share one thing with you that's a little bit off the beaten path, but I'll share with you. I'm an Agatha Christie fan, and I grew up on her books. I also love Sherlock Holmes, and I think writing mysteries is very, very tricky. And I give people who can do it a lot of credit. Now, I would argue that probably most novels today are suspense novels. They're kind of based on, there's a serial killer out there or some sort of killer, and this character in this book or this movie or show has to get them. But if you're writing something that has a lot of mystery elements to it, it is very intrinsically plotted, and the I's have to be dotted and T's crossed. I watched a movie last week. I saw it back when it was in college, called Evil Under the Sun. It was the second one with Peter Ustinov as Hercule Poirot, and it did well at the box office, and continued kind of the Agatha Christie run. But it's a murder that takes place on an island with like a resort, and yet it's so painstakingly explained that where every character is during the course of this critical hour period where the victim is killed. And some of it is fun in how they explain it because people don't know, or they're lying, or they're caught in this lie by, but Agatha Christie is thinking it out. And it reminded me in things like, and then there were none, also known as 10 Little Indians back in the day, that you have these people and you have to account for where they are for them to be alone and get killed, or somehow be misled and over here, and then somehow they're done away with and nobody sees it. All that stuff has to be accounted for, because if it isn't, you're going to go like, well, then what's the sense of this mystery if you're just screwing with this as it goes on? You have to be fair with a mystery. Like, you're showing me this. I mean, everything that was written in a Sherlock Holmes story there is for us to see. In fact, Sherlock Holmes famously said, it's all in front of you. You just don't know how to look. And that's what Conan Doyle did in his writing too. It's all there. We're just not necessarily seeing what Holmes is. Here, you have a certain amount of mystery to this, because you have these people working against each other. Like, this person's working against that. This person's trying to find out this. This person is gaining access to it. We've got, the character of, is it Slightly, who's the one who's betraying Cavalier and giving his information to Morrow? Is that the kid's name?
Yeah, Slightly.
And okay, so we need to know where he is, who's eavesdropping on him, who's around when he's doing his stuff, because he's sneaking about. And you've got a number of those kind of things going on here. But at the bottom line, with Noah Hawley, with this, he's written some very interesting villains in the creatures, some very interesting dynamics, but he then doesn't follow through on them, or he gets sloppy with them. First, and I'll just say this big one, and this is the overarching problem I've had since day one with this, is, again, to the mystery theme. If you're setting up this world where there is people eavesdropping on others, and you've got all this technology, and you can do these things, and you can do that things, and oh, Wendy's so smart, she's intuitively doing this stuff and manipulating the feed and all that kind of stuff. Okay, you've set this world up, and all this stuff that's kind of interesting, because maybe I'll see some of the monitoring too. And then you walk away from it by episode 3. I mean, in this episode, okay, so you've got this $1 billion experiment going on that Boy Cavalier is willing to go and meet with Yutani in this, negotiation session in front of a legal representative of the 5 sort of countries, and they're throwing around billions of dollars. I will pay $20 billion, and then he goes, I'll pay 50, and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, money is nothing to these people, and yet they have no support staff. They don't have a night crew. They don't have guards. I mean, here you've just stolen these 5 creatures from outer space, and you don't have any guards around. Nobody's protecting that. Nope. Arthur can just walk into the lab at any time he wants and get access to these files, even though he's been fired rather summarily by the enforcer. And the enforcer's gone too. Whether is he a human or an android? Why does he disappear? How does he let Arthur get around? This is sloppy writing. And they could have taken care of it. You could have, okay, here's the challenge, Noah. Have these guards who are patrolling it every step of the way. How do you get rid of them? How do you distract them? What do you do? What does Wendy do? What does Arthur do? Somebody has to do something to sneak around. But instead, there's nobody in a hallway for 20 minutes. What? There's no cameras that are picking this stuff up. What? Cavalier is just throwing around billions, but he's riding home acting like he's never been in a spaceship before. Meanwhile, Kersh is sitting there on his little, his laptop, suddenly monitoring, it looks like Toodles is dead, and these flies are eating him up and showing me that maybe these synths aren't all they're cracked up to be. That's absurd. The other thing I'm just going to say, and I'm kind of a dog with the bone on this, but again, if it isn't on the page, it isn't on the stage. And as a writer of profession, it really bothers me. But we are now 6 episodes in. There's only 2 left. And he set up various plot points in earlier episodes that now have been completely disbanded. I mean, Curly is set up in episode 3 as going to be a major character. Like, she might be competitive with Wendy. Maybe there's going to be a battle between those two. Maybe there's going to be something that Curly is doing to undermine Wendy to get a superior position in the eyes of Boy Cavalier. Maybe Curly could have been taken to the meeting with Katani and just to show that she wants to be part of that business with him too and look at the bigger picture. Nope, she's not in this episode. I mean, she's out on the dock for maybe 30 seconds of screen time. Okay.
Well, no, I mean, that
but
brings up
she hasn't figured really in 3 hours. And it's like, where is she? Where is that story thread? And there's others that have done that same thing. I mean, I think they're playing with Nibs. Like, okay, is Nibs a major character or not? Because in this one, it seems like she is, but then, I mean, as we just talked about with Toodles, he doesn't do anything until right now. And of course, they give him all this time to be a character because he's immediately going to be killed. It's like they used to do in a lot of slasher movies, like, okay, we're going to kill 8 teenagers by, and here's the one teenager we're going to get to know right before that person gets killed. That's how you know he's going to be the next one killed, because suddenly the movie's spending time on developing him.
Well, there's a lot
anyway,
we got to talk.
Thoughts.
Well, there's a lot of mini points we got to tackle in there. Let's start with Curly. Toodles / Isaac. At the end of the episode, he gets ordered to go in to check on the lab, and this is basically a setup where he's going to get eaten by the fly creature. But it's supposed to be a 2-person job. Yeah, and I think Kersh is the one who says, "Is Curly there?" And Curly's sitting right behind him on the outside on that dock. Right. And Toodles lies and says, "Oh, no, she's not here. She just left or something." He just wants to go and do the big boy job all by himself. That should have been Curly's part, because of what you were saying in the end of episode 3 or around that. It's very clear that she wants to become big in the organization. It would have been interesting if she had taken on that, like she had done that little bit of deception so she can get the brownie points, and that's what ends up being her demise. On the topic of the demise, one of the things that was so bothersome to me about the scene where Toodles gets trapped in that chamber and then eaten by the flies is I didn't care, because I know he's a synthetic.
Yep.
And it's shot and acted in a way that, oh, wait, Noah Hawley wants me to actually feel something in this moment, but I don't, because understanding how technology works in the 21st century, once again, they're going to have backups of this guy. Yes. You can build, they probably have it. There was a promo from Prometheus, I think, the first of the Ridley Scott prequels, that showed like David in a package, like kind of like bursting out of this package, like he was almost being like you were cracking open a new shirt, and this person came out. I'm like, they probably have storage lockers of these things, like waiting around. All you got to do is download the personality into it, and all of a sudden you have a new Toodles. It's like what we're seeing from Jared Leto and Tron Legacy, or Ares. Sorry, Tron Ares coming out. Yeah. If you kill one on the battlefield, we just make you a new one.
Right.
So as this character is being 17. Mickey 17, exactly. But better book than a movie. If this were a human character, one that we'd gotten to know, maybe he was a human who was assisting the synths. Maybe it was a teenager or a young person who was there to help guide these young teenage synths into their adult, transition, or be someone they can relate to, because they're in this world of adults. We come to know them, we come to like them. So when they go into that lab, probably not in any kind of a manner of deception of like, oh, I can go help, I can just go run and do this really quick, because they're a good person. And then they tragically meet their end. That's, it'd be like Newt, getting eaten by a fly. Like, oh, that's really sad. I feel
Mhm.
something here. But no, it's just a synthetic kid that his big story arc up until that point is, oh, I'm going to change my name. I don't care. I barely remember
Yeah,
your first name.
that's the only thing he's done really in the whole series up until this key moment where he's sacrificed because it's just easy writing.
Right. And on top of that, it gets back into these questions of surveillance that we've had. He goes into this lab, he gets the tray. It's the one interesting moment for this entire show and possibly this entire series so far is he goes to feed the flies and he's bringing out, as we've discussed, this tray full of spare metal parts. I'm like, wait, these things eat junk? That's really interesting. It's not organic matter from what I can tell. But he breaks part of the door in the containment unit, and instead of calling for help, which I'll be willing to give this to him because he's like a 12-year-old boy and he's already lied to not have backup in there, so he doesn't want to get in trouble. But once again, you're breaking something in the middle of a $1 trillion security scientific lab that's gonna set off an alarm somewhere, or at least it should. And then he
Right.
gets trapped in there. Our sheep with the eyeball is kind of like messing around with everybody who goes into the labs, kind of playing like a little mind game with him. And he does the same thing with Arthur in a little bit, which we'll get to. But his death didn't mean anything, especially when you see that these aliens melt metal with their acid. They consume metal and they also excrete something that can dissolve metal, which last I checked, a lot of the materials in this lab and on this spaceship are made of metal.
Yes.
So how are these things being contained? Why have they not spit their way out of captivity until this point? Do the Magneto thing where you come up with a plastic chamber or something that they can't get through. Maybe have a line of dialogue like, oh, this is a special chamber. We can never move these things because in our research, we've discovered that they melt through metal.
Right. Or I mean, and see, that's the screenwriting problem. It's like, okay, so you've got these things that can basically obliterate metal, obliterate synths and all that kind of stuff, as we find out here. What do I do to contain them? Oh, I just put them in a cage. No, you have to find a better reason for them to be incarcerated. And what is that? Is it an electronic field? Is it a plastic thing? Is it something that they can't affect? Whatever. You can make up a metal that is immune to that. They've done all this exploration and everything else. Maybe they have that. God knows they can do surgery without any sterilization of themselves as the doctors or the environment. But those are things that I dare say you want answered. It's just, and I know we've gotten some criticism, and I've gotten some criticism in some of the DMs as I've posted about this, saying that I'm being too hard on this series, and they went after us a little bit last week in the messages too. But shouldn't somebody else be hard on the creators of the show asking these questions? Again, I've said this to you before, and I'll just quickly say it here. When David Fincher did The Social Network, he met with the writer of the screenplay, Aaron Sorkin, a week before they were going to meet with the actors, because he wanted to go over every line to just understand why Sorkin wrote that. Like, is this true? Or why did you have him say that? Or what is the meaning behind this? Or what's the point that you want this scene to be? Just so Fincher really knew it and got it and sort of understood the logic of it. And Sorkin said it was the most fascinating week he'd ever spent in show business because he had to explain everything he wrote. And some of the stuff he hadn't thought through. And then he was forced to think it through and made it better. And I mean, isn't that what Hollywood readers are, or these big producers who know how to look at this and understand its value and its worth? And here I look, it's like Noah Hawley, he brought Fargo back to the point that the Coen brothers wanted to produce it, and they originally didn't want anything to do with any sequels, and he got 5 seasons out of it. He's brilliant. Well, he is a very good, clever, creative guy, and he did a good job of recreating sort of the essence and the feel and the vibe of that movie into series that he wrote himself. Good for him. But here it's like, okay, he wants to be scary, and we know that Alien is scary, and these drooling monsters and dark corridors and twisty shapes in the it's a modern horror movie, if you will, because we're in a haunted house, except it's a spaceship. I've gotten that through 8 different versions of the movies and the franchise and the books and the comics. What are you bringing that's new to it? Okay, so this is all about who deserves to run the planet. Is it a brilliant guy like Cavalier who doesn't have any peers? Or is it an old school android like Kersh who's been around long enough that he's become a very learned elder? Or is it somehow this weird new combo of human beings and synth bodies so they can live forever, just like in Get Out and some other sci-fi that's been out there? Okay, that's a theme, but that needs to be established in the first episode, as opposed to I'm just imitating the first Alien because aren't I cool? This is all the Easter egg shit for the fanboys. That isn't storytelling. That isn't a proper use of this franchise. And here we are, 6 episodes in now with 2 to go, and they're asking more questions every episode about why does this make sense? What is this doing? What's the point of this? Where is Curly? I don't get that. It's basic storytelling 101, and they're missing layups and free throws on this.
Well, I think something that you said is very key, because Noah Hawley has said that the theme of this show, or one of the core themes, is, does humanity deserve to continue on? And I feel if you're going to make that lofty of a proclamation and say, I think this is something we really need to wrestle with, guys, then your material had better demonstrate the best of humanity and not have this many problems in it. Because watching this show, I don't want to go on living, let alone humanity, right? But on top of that,
that's hilarious.
Well, it's partially true. I mean, watching this show, you get the worst examples of power mad, egotistical people. You get children in adult android bodies who act half their age. And then you get people making ridiculous decisions. I mean, Joe is supposed to be sort of our he's Wendy's the human brother of the little girl that Wendy used to be. And yet he's walking around this episode like saying, hey, hypothetically, if I were to try and steal my sister, how could I do that? Can I get off the island with her? Hypothetically, if I wanted to escape this island, and he's asking this of like security guards and heads of security and androids and in labs that are being surveilled. He's not slick. I can't get behind anybody in this show, except maybe for Arthur, because he's the one raising these ethical questions. But then again, as we've established, the one guy who you've just fired because he is morally opposed to what you're doing in your top secret research lab, you don't escort him out or shoot him in the head. And
he's allowed to walk around and betray his wife and her work and the whole lab because he's now trying to tell Joe to get the most popular student, Wendy, out before it's too late. And if it's that bad, what does he know that isn't going to bring his wife down? I mean, there's just all these questions. Here's another one. And these are little questions that you ask because we're thinking while we're watching this and wondering why somebody else hasn't thought about it. And it's not about, we're superior critics, we're condescending this. It's like, no, these are legitimate questions I'm wondering about as I'm watching these scenes to wonder, where is the actual drama? What is the actual conflict? They say in every scene, you're supposed to write, what is at stake in this scene? And ultimately there's bigger stakes that are overarching. But for example, the scene where the two power hungry people are debating about whether or not, you ruined my island and it's now mine and I'm going to pay you this and all that. And, they've got Cavalier, who's supposed to be this brilliant guy, putting his dirty feet, because he walks around everywhere with bare feet, like he's so can't be bothered to get out of his robe and PJs, up on the table. And that's just like, well, that's him being boy Cavalier. And Yutani is sitting there, trying to be a tough-ass negotiator. But meanwhile, she's got Morrow behind him. And Morrow now knows the truth about Cavalier sabotaged the spaceship so it crash landed. So Cavalier is responsible for the thousands of people who are dead on his part of the world, in his domain, his city, not her. And yet she's sitting there taking all this as, oh, he's got me in the chess game. I'm going to now lose it and have to pay or whatever like that in front of the the arbiter. And it's like, why is Morrow being quiet there? He's got the answer and could sink Cavalier. In fact, probably get him arrested. And he's got the proof of it, but he doesn't say anything. Now, is he going to play that card later? Maybe. But why wasn't he playing it there? Why isn't he helping? He's in the meeting. Why is he there at all if he's not going to be there to disclose that rather critical piece of information?
2 side points.
Okay.
One, why does he need to say it? Because he'd already gone to, as we established at the end of last week's episode, which takes place in a weird part of the continuity. I don't know when this is supposed to happen in the timeline, but he goes to meet with Yutani, even though this is after the crash. And she's like, get him everything he needs to take down this company, even though they had an identical conversation while he was still trapped in the city.
Yep.
After the crash. Let's just put that aside. But the point is, he's hanging out with her now. He's probably debriefed her on what happened on the Maginot.
Exactly.
So she should know, unless for some reason he is hiding the fact that he had intercepted a transmission where Boy Cavalier is sabotaging the mission and planning to rip off Yutani. So why doesn't she bring that up in the negotiation? She could have shut that down toot sweet. But the other thing is, if she didn't know, like, her tech people should. I don't know exactly how this whole cyborg thing
he's
works,
got all
because
these memory banks and he's holding them himself. Nobody scans him. He's only an employee, arguably, at the end of the day. These are questions I have. Somebody should have brought that up and shut down Cavalier. And then I keep thinking, well, the reason we're doing that is because Cavalier has to have the final the final place, probably the 8th episode, where he gets ripped asunder and they start by, burning off his feet or something like that. So he gets a great come up as the villain.
Alien is going to eat his feet. I guarantee. Yeah.
It's the same way that the Jeff Goldblum fly vomited on John Getz's, I think, hand and foot in the climax of the fly. Those are just things that who are we watching here? The stakes are such, but I mean, Cavalier does not have the advantage in this scene, and yet he's allowed to have the advantage, so he can continue to be prick number one in this show and probably pay off what Wendy's thinking, like, oh, the humans that are trying to help me here aren't really helping too much, and they're kind of ruthless. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. But I that's just one of those things where somebody should have said, okay, Morrow's there. Why hasn't he told Yutani about this, or wouldn't she know, or wouldn't he have shared it, or wouldn't he have brought it up to help her?
Especially because she seems very flustered during part of that. Like, she should have been
losing billions.
Well, but that's
billions.
Well, that's another thing, because it's established that Boy Cavalier is the world's youngest trillionaire. But we also have to assume, if we're dealing on that scale, that Weyland-Yutani is also a multi-trillion-dollar company. So when they're like, tack on $5 billion for the cleanup, or make it it's like tack on 50, make it 20, make it 25. Like, there's a big difference between $50 billion and multiple trillions of dollars. So it's like people talking, 1,000 people with $1,000 each saying, throw an extra 25 cents. It just doesn't make any sense, except as like a dick swinging contest. But Yutani should have had all the cards and maybe just taken a lot of stuff and, let Boy think that he had the upper hand. But she was clearly rattled and in kind of like a lost position, that she had to be kind of like boosted up by Morrow. And it's like, well, I guess we could do an exfiltration and cause a distraction. We talked about this before the show the other day, and before this show, I should say, after we'd watched the episode. And I just want to walk through an alternate scene that I had. I'm going to bore you with this, Jeff, but I think the world needs to hear it.
I'm sure they do.
The problem is, you mentioned, there's no tension, there's no horror, there's no drama in this scene. We know at that negotiating table exactly how it's going to end. Boy Cavalier is going to walk out with his head held high, and we're going to cut back to the island, and Weyland-Yutani is going to be up to something. Wouldn't it have been interesting if Boy is really high in his own supply? Yutani announces, well, we've got our own program. We've been building our own synthetics. It's a secret project. And we've done it all thanks to your research, courtesy of Mr. Kersh, who's been our inside man the entire time. Mm-hmm. And then a side panel opens up, and an exact replica of Boy Cavalier comes out and shoots the real Boy Cavalier in the head, and then announces, okay, time to go back to the island. And he traipses off, bare feet and all, to infiltrate his own company and destroy it from the inside, and or facilitate its absorption by Weyland-Yutani, which is perhaps another reason we never heard of Prodigy before, because it's a sub-corporation of the Master Corporation. Something like that. It would have been surprising. It would have been interesting. It could have been, chilling. It would have been like that scene in Die Hard where the one guy is talking to Alan Rickman and he's sipping that Diet Coke and all of a sudden his brains are all over the chair.
Right.
Not exactly an original idea, but it would have been better than this.
Well, especially if you're trying to be twisty and as you're building towards a climax where you need them, because something's got to give. I think they also could have had what if, again, this is just thinking off the top of your inspiration, but what if to that point, maybe Morrow talked to Yutani afterwards and said, why didn't you bring up what I told you about, Cavalier sabotaging this? She goes, because I've talked to my board and we're going to let him lose all of his synths because they're not prepared for this. And then set up that they know something about this fly creature that it can take out synths. So they get the same information as Kersh does through his, spy versus, his Apple tablet. And so they're at least sort of on these weird parallel paths or something, or show me that, Yutani is a really smart cookie and worthy of her dominance in this world too. These are just things that I continually wonder. Or another one I thought is, okay, so, Toodles wants to have his day in the sun and he can handle it alone. And he tells a lie to Kersh and all that kind of stuff. But wouldn't have been interesting is as he was about to be sacrificed, or maybe right after he was sacrificed, that then comes Curly, who, because she is a little bit smarter and more worldly and she wants to make an impression, somehow, I don't know, contains the flies or figures out something, and I don't want to say salvages anything or saves the day, but comes close to that. Like, oh, she took some gumption. She followed Toodles to find out what he was doing, saw him get killed, and now is doing something to save the project or preserve the species or something or whatever to contain them, and maybe, get that sheep back on its heels or hooves. And then that makes her look good. I mean, do something with that where you're being true to what you've set her up as. And frankly, that's the only characterization she's been given. She's ambitious and wants to be the favorite versus Wendy. So show me something where she's doing that. Instead, you could have had her coming on the conversation with Dame Sylvia, and maybe she sides with Dame Sylvia to make Wendy feel outnumbered. I don't understand if we're creating tension every scene. It's so basic, but it's checkers. It's very little chess.
Well, that's the sort of the problem with this particular strain of episodic television is there's so many ideas bouncing around for so many characters that you don't have any through lines. I want to pull up a comment right here from Jay Vasquez that I think kind of gets to what we're saying.
Oh, okay.
Well, first I want to bring up Petty's comment because he joined earlier. Hey guys, I'm not really following the series. Good for you. But I hear the analysis in the background while I work. Well, I hope we're providing. Yeah, I hope we're providing some entertainment there. Jay Vasquez says, I'm guessing we'll find out everyone's ulterior motives in the final episodes. Everyone is holding their cards close to their chest. I'm really interested in knowing Kersh's agenda. Here's the thing. I'm going to put this back up. I respect where you're coming from, Jay, but my problem is I have no confidence that the answers to all these questions is going to be complete, because I feel like it's going to just lead into a series 2. And B, is not going to be compelling enough to compensate for having been jerked along for 6 weeks of watching the show. I feel like at this point, I should have some idea of what Kersh wants. It shouldn't be, I've been standing in the background and alternatingly being nice to people and being jerks to people and not saying things or saying things because of X. Like, what is that going to be that's going to make me think, oh, that was all worth it? Hold on a second.
Can I chime in? Oh, good.
That's what's making this interesting. We're finding out more and more who people really are and what their agenda end game is leading to. I wonder if all will be answered, it'll cliffhang into a season 2. Well, that's the thing. I don't know that we're finding out more about these characters.
Interesting point too.
I don't think we're finding out more about these characters because they keep loading more stuff onto them. The whole idea of Wendy being able to control technology We haven't seen that since episode 2, maybe the beginning of episode 3 in a flashback. They sidelined that to have her focus on, oh, she can talk to the aliens now. And, oh, she's talking to Nibs, who thought she was pregnant. This whole thing is turning into...
But she's having a legitimate conversation with Nibs as opposed to reading her and knowing what's going on sort of in her memory bank. She has to find that out from Nibs's own testimony for her to put 2 and 2 together, as opposed to this technological advancement that she could maybe use to be scanning her memory banks or something else.
Well,
I want to push.
But my point is, like, we're cramming like 2 or 3 seasons of a daily soap opera into an alien series where we keep flitting from one thing to the next. Like that bottle episode last week with the Maginot origin story was really a waste of time. There's so much padding and filler in here that I would like to believe, Jay, that we're going to end up in a place where there's resolution, but I don't think we've had enough meat to the story to make it satisfying or matter. Okay, Jeff, go for it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I really like what Jay said, and I think that's probably where they're going, but I'm going to just zig a little bit instead of zag, as maybe, you know, I'm not saying I'm David Fincher or anything like that, but I think somebody who's saying yes and, or yes, but, like almost like if you were a teacher or a creative director or a director and you're looking at this material. To your point, Jay, what if they did that today in this episode 6? Wow, they did that already in episode 6. They showed me what Kersh's sort of agenda is. Where are they going to go now? Well, that's the challenge to Noah Hawley, is doing something better. Okay, show me that in the end of Act 2. Now you've got Act 3 to come up with. What else you got? What can you do that makes the story even more intriguing? Okay, we now know that about Kersh, and because here's what I think is happening in contrast to what your hopes and thoughts are, Jay. I'm ahead of the show now. You're ahead of the show now. We're all ahead of the show now. So why are we ahead of the show? Because you haven't shown us what Kersh's agenda is. We know he has one, but why don't you show us that? Don't let the audience keep getting ahead of you. I think better screenwriting, better filmmakers, you know certain places it's going to go, but not quite the way it was. I'll give you one quick example, and this is one of my favorite things where it's made me wonder, even when I watch it today. I've watched it probably 10 times. In Inglourious Bastards, when Shoshana is getting proposed to, do the movie theater thing over the lunch and all that, and then along comes Hans Landa. Does he know that she's Shoshana? Why does he say wit to the creme? Because, okay, that would be against Jewish dietary stuff, right? But is he doing that to test to see if she says no, or is she going to be ballsy enough to eat it? Does he even know that she's who she thinks? I think he does without ever actually saying it. But we're left for that. That point, Quentin Tarantino is ahead of me writing, because my first thought is, don't get exposed, don't do anything that's going to get you exposed. And yet he's already like, what if Hans Landa is already there? What if I'm having you catch up to Hans Landa because he's the smartest guy in the room and he's smarter than the audience? Bravo, Mr. Tarantino. I want that here. Okay, Kersh is clearly up to something. He lies to Boy Cavalier when Cavalier says, everything okay? It's all good. Okay, he's capable of lying, and he's lying for his agenda. Then show it to me. Don't wait until the end, or please don't have it just be a cliffhanger, and then we have to wait an entire 2 years for it to come up in season 2. Get ahead of me and make me love you for that. But I think this stuff is almost like it's fanboy stuff. It's silly stuff. It's basic narrative that isn't being explained. And then now we're getting ahead of the characters with 2 episodes left. And to your point, maybe they won't even bother to explain it, or they could have explained it now and have something even more delicious and wonderful for us in the last 2 episodes that we weren't expecting. But now we're just expecting, well, eventually they're going to figure out what Kersh is doing. I'm already there. I'm bored that you haven't shown me already, because I know what his agenda is. He's got one. Tell me what it is.
I mean, the other problem, and this goes back to surveillance, frankly, and I know we got some other comments coming in. I'll get to those, I promise, including this one that's on the screen from Jay, which I haven't actually read yet.
Oh, okay.
But I need to know more about Boy Cavalier's relationship with Kersh, because there's an awful lot of trust there. He's on this ship going back to the island, and he's noticing that Kersh is sitting there on his iPad, like looking at stuff. At one point he says, hey, what you got going on there? And Kersh looks up and he goes, nothing, or something like that. No, you know, when you have your head chief, synthetic android guy doing something, monitoring what's going back on in the lab, you're not curious about it. I get they're trying to paint him as an egotist, but I don't buy Boy Cavalier as the kind of egotist who could have built $1 trillion technology and science company. This guy needs to be smarter than everybody else. Like we said, with what made Alien and Aliens work so well, is you had people who were at the top of their game or at the top of their professions, acting for the most part really smart, but coming up against something that was more savage and cunning than them, causing circumstances that they had to fight their way out of. Not that the alien was smarter, but it would do things like cause destruction. Like they would have to, crawl through vents or, get off of a platform before it blew up because they had no choice but to detonate it to get rid of these things. Situations they had to fight their way out of in really intelligent ways. And there's just nothing smart about this show. I've heard people kind of, to use your term, fanboy out about a lot of the aesthetics of this show. And I agree. I think it's really impressive the way that they've built this kind of a retro futurist alien universe, but even that is starting to show its seams. Last week on the Maginot episode, we showed the science lab, and we had the whole thing where the dumb scientist was drinking open water and having the sandwich in the lab next to this open container of an unknown life form and all that stuff. The containment cages in there had those like red and green lights, and they were very specific, kind of cylindrical. Right. But there was very specific design to these cages, and they looked cool. We also see those same cages used in this episode. Great. It's stylistic continuity. But the Maginot went out into deep space 65 years ago. Those units that we saw in there were designed 65 plus years ago. Boy Cavalier's Prodigy Corporation is a state-of-the-art modern science lab, which would not be using technology that's 65 years old. It looks cool, and again, it makes visual continuity between the episodes, but when you stop and think about it, it doesn't make any sense. To what our running theme of this whole episode, this whole series has been, is anybody paying attention to the writing except the few people in the audience who are still awake, but not even gradually, but rapidly losing interest? All right. So we're going to go back to these comments because I think we're about done. Basically, in terms of the end of the episode, Arthur gets face hugged because of course he's going to, slightly takes the body out of the containment cell, and the fly's gotten loose. It starts chasing him into the lab. What does he do? He hides inside a giant vent, the face of which is extremely easy to get off. The giant vent that leads to other places in this facility that is also a top secret lockdown science lab that is doing work on experimental creatures from deep space. Whatever. He gets the grate onto the opening in the wall just before this bug can find them, or it stops the bug from getting in. A bug that I might remind you again can spit acid and melt metal, such as the grate that you've just put up to quote unquote protect yourself. All right. Let's see. Okay, so Jay says, I agree with what you're saying. Also, maybe the creators wanted to see how good this show actually did before they really tuned it up. That's not the job of a television writer. The job of a television writer is to great television. Forget good television, okay? We are past the era of The Sopranos and Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul and hell, from what I've heard, Fargo, like award-winning, smart, amazing television. This stuff does not cut it. This stuff might have been acceptable back in the 1990s, but not in an era where we've, passed the golden age of TV. Let's see. I'm not meaning to yell at you, Jay. I'm just saying I hear these arguments.
But, he may be right. That may have been the studio's take on it. Like they're hedging their bets. It's like the studio that decided to do Dune, but we're not going to do Dune 2 because, well, let's see if they go and see Dune first. They should have just made Dune 1 and Dune 2 at the same time, save their money, and they could have come out in like they did with Lord of the Rings, where it was 1 December, 2nd December, 3rd December, boom. But they've kind of screwed up some of that now.
Well, with Dune, I understand
some of that same stuff here. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, no, with Dune, I just want to say I understand that decision. It was frustrating at the time because I wanted to see the sequel right away. but we were also, that was an overlap with COVID when people didn't know if there were going to be movie theaters anymore. So it's like, are we going to spend another
True.
$250 million on something that might end up just being watched on a phone, if at all? Let's see. Betting an alien TV episodic show being this popular was a huge gamble. No, I mean, because I think there was a big call for it. I mean, there is a legitimate geek culture. Disney bought Fox, and one of the reasons they bought Fox is because of these giant diehard franchises that have fan bases that go back 4+ decades. So they knew what they were doing, but it's just like what Disney did with Star Wars. You buy something, but then you unravel it in front of the, and turn off the audience that brought you to the dance. The Fading Man is back. He says there are only 8 episodes. They're trying to tell a big story. I disagree with that.
I think he's right.
Okay.
Well,
okay.
I think he's right. They're trying to jam too much into what they've got, and they should have accommodated it better. But go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, I agree. Yes, I think the mandate was to tell a big story, but I feel like they're just throwing a lot of stuff in there because they don't have a big story or a big idea that they're trying to get at. The idea, once again, of does humanity deserve to exist could be explored in a TV show. I might argue a Blade Runner show, but they're not digging into these themes. Again, it's soap opera stuff. It's like 3 problems of the week that we're going to bring up, semi-address, and then forget by the next episode. Continuing on, they needed to have more episodes to flesh things out. Love the show, but it's too truncated. But that is what they're greenlit to work on. That's the thing, is it's not truncated either, because there's so much padding, so much montage, so much business that's going on here that has nothing to do with forward momentum in the narrative. They have 8 hours, almost 10 hours, because as we established, some of those earlier episodes were like over an hour long.
Hour and a half, yeah.
That is plenty of time to tell a compelling story. You want proof? Go look at the first season of Firefly, Joss Whedon's TV series. I think that only got like maybe 11 or 13 episodes, like barely a half season on Fox. Episodic television that told one consistent like through line story while still having like adventures of the week. And that was, 25 years ago, just about.
Sure.
The writers are making the scientists do stupid things to move the plot along quickly, and it's the stupidity of the characters is turning up.
Yep.
That's right. See, Fading Man, I love
exactly
that
right.
I love that you love the show, but you've also stumbled on the reason that I can't love the show. I can't get past these problems because I know that there are smarter ways of telling this. Oh, cool. Uncommitted Alien D. Says cheap followers on streamboo.com. I kind of check out this Streamboo. All the kids are going there.
Well, it's funny because there's a lot of stuff that, I think some of it's well acted. I think it's intriguing. I think some of the themes they've got going are classic sci-fi, but I think it's not thought through enough. It's just, it needed another run through the typewriter with somebody pulling a Fincher and asking the questions like, okay, why is this? Why aren't we doing this? How are we going to explain that? Boy Cavalier doesn't suggest to me anything in his capacity to run a company. Now, he may be a genius in thinking of these synth morphs with human souls or whatever. I'm not sure he's the science guy who's come up with that, but I want him to be smarter too. I don't think he acts that smart. I think the stuff he's done is sloppy. Like he was caught sabotaging the ship, but because the show needs to keep him as the main villain up until the end, that hasn't been found out yet. And that's not a smart character, and it's not smart storytelling.
And you could have, in the course of 8 or 10 episodes, you could have really played with that idea of maybe he's the face of the company. And the real genius is some, 300-pound, sloppy, like socially awkward dude that no one would want to invest in. So they hired this guy almost like an actor. But then he got too big for his britches and like, hey, I've got some good ideas too. And that's what starts to destroy the company. I'm spitballing here. I don't want to rewrite the entire series.
He could be Schindler. He's in charge of presentation. Remember? And what I ask, what are you going to do? I'm in charge of presentation. I mean, he's he's young and he's so clever and all that, but maybe he's the marketing guy, not the nuts and bolts of the actual work. It's just so many things they could have done better, and I don't know why it keeps making these convenient mistakes. Like the Fady Man says, they're having these scientists who are supposed to be the smartest people taking care of this incredible experiment. They've got to have it ready to go in 3 weeks, and they're making stupid decisions. Like nobody's monitoring the lab ever. Well, and we're sending a kid who's a new robot in the synth for 7 days to feed one of these new species. But here's the other thing is like, how did they feed this thing for the 65 years on the trip back or whatever the hell it was? I mean, those are questions I'm asking too that I don't expect them to answer, but that would have been more interesting to do that as a flashback episode on how they actually got these things and took care of them on the ship for all the time they were coming back. That's never been explained. And it's like, after seeing all these, gang who can't shoot straight, I can't believe they got him onto the ship, let alone kept him alive for those decades.
Well, hell, I mean, that could have been some kind of a fun mystery on the Maginot, is they think there's a saboteur, but it's not. It's just this thing that got out and has been eating part of the ship, causing these electrical problems. Like, oh my God, that thing eats metal.
And Cavalier's got a sabotage thing that has killed off apparently thousands of people in the city, and he's going off doing these silly things and has nothing better to do with his time than read chapters of Peter Pan to his new children. Like, he doesn't have to do any kind of PR spin. Like, what happened and what are you doing with all these thousands of dead citizens, and doesn't that make your stock go down or something? I mean, I just none of this has any kind of connection to anything that's recognizable.
I'm curious at the end of this 8 episodes, how this Peter Pan thing's going to tie up, because aside from like the Peter Pan metaphors were really heavy in the first 3 episodes of this show, but they've all but vanished except for the occasional reading something into the dictaphone or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we're going to get back to that thematically or whatnot, but again, it's just another one of those things like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if? I'm like, yeah, it would be cool, but what are you going to do with it? Like, how does that relate to the overall theme of what we're presenting here? All right, so I see the word David mentioned here. It gets me excited.
Oh,
Jay Vasquez says, could it be possible at all that some of David's directives have somehow found their way into Kersh's programming? He seems to know what to look for with the alien embryo. I'm wishful thinking here, Lel. That honestly, this goes to the heart of something that's kind of annoyed me, is that we're not, as much as I'm not a fan of Covenant, and I've kind of warmed on some of the ideas of Prometheus rather than the actual film Prometheus. I love the end of Covenant where Fassbender is flying out to this unknown planet with Catherine Waterston freshly sedated with this alien embryo in her, like falling asleep to a nightmare, and these thousands of other crew people that are about to be science experiments, and we're never going to find out what happened to them unless they address it somehow in this prequel series, which I don't even know if they're going to do. But I love the idea that you brought David into this, because he is part of this. He is part of this continuity. So yeah, bring it all together. But to that point, and something you brought up, Jeff, this is a giant lab. I mean, it's a private research facility, but there aren't teams and teams of scientists, teams and teams of security. You're playing this big rollout in a couple of weeks, I think they said is the timeline, to the world to present these new synths. Where are the annoying marketing people saying, hey, do you get some headshots for these things? Or we'd like to do some interviews with Nibs. Oh, that's not going to work out today. Oh, why not? Wouldn't it be interesting if, and maybe they'll develop this in episode 7 or 8, but Nibs thought she was pregnant, and then they wipe her mind in the background of the control room scene when Arthur is cleaning out his desk. For some reason, they keep cutting to the image of Nibs's x-rays, and the largest image is like of her pelvis and like her womb area. Would it be interesting if there really was something breeding inside of her? And she wasn't crazy. She wasn't having a delusion. I don't know what you would do with that or how it would work out, but
they'll have it come out mystery when they're doing the launch for all the press at the big party. It'll come out, and It'll be like 10 little, like she had 10 in her litter, and they'll all just go spraying everybody in the press, and then Kersh will be left, and Kersh will be like, that's why we have to do this very quietly and just go after one. We don't want to bring back 5.
I'd be with it. It's got to be better than what we're gonna get. I guarantee it. Okay, we're gonna breeze the rest of these comments, and then we're gonna get to bed because it's late. And I do appreciate everybody writing in. This is good stuff. You're really
Very
giving
good
us
stuff.
stuff to think about and talk about. All right. So Jay says, I agree. As good as I think the show is, I'm really enjoying it. The writing and character decisions could be a bit more fleshed and thought out.
Thank you, Jay.
Yep. Let's see. Fading Man says the monsters of the week really help the show, keeps it interesting. I wish it were more monster of the week. There's sort of this. I like that the focus was sort of on the fly in this episode, but they haven't done enough of it'd be cool if there was like a snowball effect, like they introduced the the Xenomorph, the tentacle monster, and they keep kind of building up to this lab explosion the release. It feels like they're trying to do that, but there's so much other stuff going on that there's like this lack of a focus in here. Right? How did they figure out the flies have an inorganic diet?
Exactly.
Well, yeah. If Wendy sides with the alien, they haven't really justified it. It's too surface, needs more scenes. I think
she's
what
probably
they're going to do.
She's probably going to, because she's already set up that she doesn't like humans. But hey, that alien's been taking out her friends and crew members and other innocent people too. So yeah, to Fading Man's point, it isn't really justified.
But it will be, I think, because I have a feeling that Joe/Hermit is going to be a dead meat by the end of this show, and it's probably going to be what sets Wendy off and says, "Okay, now I'm leading an alien insurrection." As the preview or prelude to Alien Resurrection. Jay says, "Boy, reading Peter Pan over the dictaphone reminds me of Third Body Problem with that guy reading to the aliens." I have not watched Third Body Problem, but I hear great things about the show. Yeah. Have you watched Third Body Problem?
Yeah, it's good. It's funny. It's a funny reference. Nicely done.
I've heard the book's really good too. Fading Man says, I wonder if Kersh broke the door and taught the boy to bring the tray all the way inside.
Yes.
He trained him. He obviously didn't care if he died. Something is going on there.
He's right, because Kersh said, remember, follow everything to the letter, because this is how you do it. And, the thing is broken. Well, you still have to feed them. I'm sure Kersh sabotaged that door. He's right. I think he was setting him up to watch him, because otherwise, why is he watching him? He's watching to see, are the synths vulnerable in any way? I mean, but how does he know that about the fly? The fly might do it just because they figured out that he eats metal for food. Well, yeah, synths are made of metal. Okay, but I think he set him up.
Well, maybe, and I don't doubt that you're right, you, Jeff, and Fading Man. My question is, if the mandate was to do everything by the letter, then if a door handle comes off in your hand in a highly scientific, highly sensitive research area, doesn't protocol dictate, hey, I should call someone?
Yes, call security.
Yes.
It's unbelievable. And there wouldn't be security there to begin with. I just think, really, billions of dollars on the line for the world dominance with these alien creatures, and there's no guards watching them.
We saw 2 guards with Joe going out on patrol, and they recruited Joe. That's the one thing that kept him from becoming Slightly's victim, is like, hey, we need a third. I'm like, what, for the island? What are you doing here, show? All right.
What are you doing here, show? I love that.
Jay says, I do hope we find out why we keep getting moments of hazmat suits scrubbing the wall. Are they cleaning up previous synths that went AWOL?
They've kind of abandoned that too, but that was a very good question. And there were a couple very conspicuous scenes that showed that, like, who are these people? What are they cleaning up?
I think that's another reference to Blade Runner. The scrubbing is strange.
Yeah. Scrubbing
is strange when you're a
scrubbing bubbles. Ho, those aliens, they leave a mess. They really do.
All right. Well, I'm about to leave a mess if I don't stop talking about this show. I'm going to start throwing
Alrighty.
up stuff that will burn through my wood desk and my ceramic tile floor. But thank you, Jeff, for going on this journey with me. We have
Of course.
2 episodes left. I have this terrible feeling that episode 8 is going to be like 6 hours long to tie all this stuff up. But we'll see. But anyway, out there, folks, thank you for joining us for talking because we've been talking, but you've been
Jay and Fady, man. They've been very good stuff, good fodder to think about even more.
Yep. And Petty also
Petty
listening
too.
along
Thank you
as
for
he
listening
works.
along. We love you.
Yep.
We love that you do that.
And folks out there, if you like this show, please like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. Please support Jeff of the Establishing Shot and Pipeline Artists. His information will be down below, along with that of all of Earth's mightiest critics. Hold on a second. Looks like we might have a new comment coming in here. Oh, hey. Jay says, thanks for covering this, guys. Thank you, Jay. I really have enjoyed you and the Fady Man hopping on the last couple of weeks to liven things up. And most of all, I just wanted to take this time to soapbox for a second, as I've been doing all hour. We are pretty hard on this show. I think partially because we're fans of great TV and great movies, and we want things that we love to be great. And I'm a lifelong Alien franchise fan, so when there's a TV series, like my 12-year-old self would be geeking out at the prospect of being able to watch Alien every week. And we just want to be better.
If Mr. Hawley is watching this show, he can hire us for season 2 as writers to help him make a better story.
Yes, we will make your season 2 not number 2. But I will say, what I appreciate is y'all's patience with us, engaging with us in conversation, asking questions. And, we're trying to be respectful and treat your questions intelligently because they are intelligent questions. I just love this back and forth dialogue. We're not sniping each other. We're not yelling. I've maybe getting a little bit animated, but, love the debate and the back and forth. This is a lot of fun. And we hope you'll join us back next week for episode 7. It's called something or other. I don't know. But we'll be back next Thursday night, 8:30 p.m. Central. Until next time, whatever that is, thank you very, very, very much and take care.